like Wamatangi to start us off on this one. There's nothing we haven't said about the BBI. We know now that it is in Parliament Wednesday. Today as well it's going to be discussed. Ultimately, it will return to you as a citizen. So you're going to vote either way. So you get to decide. That's the reason why we're pushing this to the last topic, and we're just going to give it like 20 minutes to just discuss the nitty-gritties. We've spoken about BBI every other time.
Right.
You know, Matangi, you start us off on this. It came to Parliament yesterday. There was a bit of drama. In fact, you were on the floor.
Yes, I
and
was.
you were quite passionate about the issue around Mithika Linturi having been arrested. But
Right.
you almost also alluded to the fact that it seemed like almost a delay.
And they had a breakfast.
You're telling the people to come down and wait because he was on his way back.
Yes, Trevor. First, let me begin by lauding the team, the committee that looked at the report that was tabled in Parliament, and indeed now that the process is in the House. And we can be able to take it up from where Kenyans left it off after it went to the county assemblies, and Parliament can have its say on the matter, and then take it forward to members of the public. And you have done very well to have that first explainer so that people understand what are their obligations in this process, and prepare themselves and know that ultimately it is the people who will have to cast their ballot and say we like it or we don't like it, and that will be the verdict. Having said that, from where you've started, yes, indeed, the process started also in the Senate as it did in the National Assembly. There was that small hiccup, as you correctly remembered yesterday, because Senator Linturi got arrested. And he explained that himself when he came back to the floor. I was on the floor because I'm the majority chief whip of the House. And Senator Linturi is one of my members on the majority side. It is my responsibility as the chief whip to ensure that every of my members is present at that particular time. And because he had been in the House, said a few things, then he left, and that report came that he has been apprehended. I had to find out why has he been apprehended, where is he, and is it related, as one of the members insinuated. And that's why I told members, calm down so that we can be able to find out. And once we did find out, eventually you saw that Senator Linturi came back to the floor and explained himself. And what we didn't want is that unnecessary interruption or hitch that would bring either those inferences, assumptions, and insinuations, and derail such a vital process that gives the House the time to deliberate without any, any of that, smoky issues coming from nowhere. To detour or derail the mindset and thinking, and of course the outcome that should come from a debate that is sober.
Yeah.
Having said that, because that was settled, today we are going into the second day of discussion. And yesterday what happened was that the leadership of the House, that was the majority leader and the minority leader, had their say. We had also the chairperson of the committee from the Senate side, Senator Mogeni, who also had his opportunity to take members through what the committee went through. And because my good friend and lawyer, Otiende Amolo, was a member of that committee, we agree that they did a good job in trying to walk that tightrope and balancing things in some cases which were very, very difficult. And I know that there are going to be issues that we'll discuss here and maybe also discuss in the House that we have varying opinions about. But by and large, they did a good job, because finally, to the ultimate question, who is supposed to have the final word on this document? They answered correctly that it is the people. To the question that does this document fit into the description as required by Article 257 that it is a popular initiative, they answered to the affirmative. Yes, this is a people's document, so that then let the people decide. The issues in between that arose, and Trevor, I'm sure Kenyans followed, and you followed too, from the reports that I saw in your news.
Yeah.
There are varying opinions, and the work and responsibilities of members of Parliament is to put those opinions that they have on behalf of their people to debate. And it is that debate that finally brings out the right version of what each of our communities would want to be seen in that document, and how eventually we fit into it and go to vote for it. Of course, I'm mindful that two of the critical issues came out. One was that question of the unconstitutionality of certain clauses in that bill. And I'm one of those who will be probably speaking today on the floor of the Senate. And to some of those issues, like I've said, I agree a lot with many of them, and they've done a good job. I believe that the proponents of that document had very, very good intentions across the board to make this country a better country. Okay. Only one issue which personally I have a disagreement about is on the question of the determination and declaration by the committee that the process of delimiting the constituencies and indeed coming up with the 70 constituencies is unconstitutional. I firmly hold, with my knowledge of the law, with my interpretation of it, that there is nothing unconstitutional about the proposal to have the 70 new constituencies, not only to the extent of having them picked out and allocated to certain areas, but indeed the entire idea. And I want to say, as I conclude, Trevor, that nowhere in this document called the Constitution at any one time, because I saw what the committee had said, and I have a right to that opinion. They pegged their decision on the unconstitutionality of that provision on the question that it eats into or seems to usurp the role of the IEBC. And my firm thinking and position is that there is nowhere in this law, in the Constitution, where in the first place the Constitution ever envisaged, either directly, indirectly, insinuated or implied, that IEBC have the powers to create any constituencies. The article that is relevant from 88, which creates the IEBC, to 89, which gives it its functions, it has expressly been clear that IEBC never had in the first place the role of creating constituencies, or even naming them, giving boundaries, or rather delineating boundaries, yes, but creating, no. And that is why that article starts with a very clear expression that there shall be 290 constituencies in this country. So to that extent, and I have a major argument that I would make if it was time to speak about it, which I will on the floor of the House, I absolutely disagree respectfully with the committee that it was unconstitutional. I think most of it, if I can conclude by saying that, is derived from political adjustments, if you like, whereby some people may have felt that it is undesirable to seem to look like some constituencies are going in a bigger number to certain regions, and so it may not sit in very well politically. And because we are politicians, even those that sat in that committee, there is a likelihood that many may feel that if we go this way, then it may give the impression that our people are denied and others are given.
All right.
No, it's usually very encouraging when you see a potential running mate coming holding the Constitution to the studios, very, very serious, and waving it, because you challenge him, he'll be able to get to the point. I was watching yesterday, and this is an interesting country. It's a country of happy people. It's a country that also has sadness and sad times because of the hard economic times we are dealing through, and BBI has gone on, I think, long enough. And Kenyans are in a place right now where they are getting to a point of getting fed up. And my colleagues here who are in parliament, you may not realize, but out there, the people are thinking about the economy, hunger and heal. So it's about time to get done with the BBI and move on to the next thing. I just want to challenge my friends, even as you debate, let us be courageous. Let us also be open-minded. Let us present to the people and the voters of Kenya a document that we know is a good document. And if there are areas that you feel, even the bottom of your heart, that can be tweaked slightly, let us also have the courage to say, okay, change this, without altering the document for the goodness of the people. Let us also try a bipartisan approach. Say we are not there as you know, half Jubilee, half, unajua Jubilee squeeze. Is there Jubilee? Oh, it's still, kuna old Jubilee, kuna UDA, you know better, ODM. Let's be there and let people go there as members of parliament, and do the right thing for the people of Kenya, not just as members of a political party, supporting a political person who wants to aspire to a political seat. You know what I mean? Yeah. From both ends. Let's do something that is good for our people. Now, this document will pass, I believe. I can, you know, read the mood of the House, but I hope it can pass. And maybe Otieno Molo, I know you can't talk much because you're in there. You can't say much because you're in that committee. But don't we have the ability to agree to disagree on a few things? Because what I foresee is this: the Constitution may pass Parliament. It will pass the popular initiative. Maybe people vote for it. And then we're going to be tied down with court cases of constitutional interpretation in this country. Well, we are going to a new election, you know, coming up, which I'm an interested party with my friend here. And so, can't we have an ability to do a bit of tweaking today or tomorrow or the next day and pass a document that all of us say yes? It may just be a few things, but it will send a symbolic message to Kenyans that to may plateau a document that it may not be perfect, but at least it got 85–90% without a lot of grumbling. That's my simple advice and request for our members of parliament. Put aside your politics, put aside everything, and remember that all of us will one day go, and we have to leave this country to the rest of us, to our kids and our grandkids. So let's have a constitution that really helps our people, grows the economy, and helps remove us from, you know, poverty. Okay.
Gerard Gay, what will be the implication of that? A slight tweak here and there, would that then open the floodgates for all sorts of tweaks?
I'm happy that Governor Mutua has seen the light, because he is proposing the principle of win-win situation. Because I agree with him that this document does not belong to one community, one person, a section of Kenyans, but for 7.5 million Kenyans. And that has been our argument from day one. And I remember there were threats when this process started. If you don't agree with it, just go oppose, go or lead the no campaign. We were being threatened here and there. But I agree with him that Parliament, and that has been the argument, that, and you see the side A of Jubilee led by Majority Whip in the Senate is supporting. Yet some of us have concerns. The other people of Jubilee, the side B of Jubilee have concerns, is that Parliament does not exist in vain. When you look under Article 94, our legislative power, and I'm happy I read the report. The committee, by the way, led by my brother here, did very well. If you read that report, and I want to encourage all members of Parliament, Parliament does not exist in vain, because we have the power under Article 94, legislative power. When people argue about Article 257, that Parliament just becomes a conveyor belt, they are misleading Kenyans, because this is a bill that has been introduced. So the question has been, when this bill, the Constitutional Amendment Bill, has been brought to Parliament, should it undergo the process that are there, like first reading, second reading, committee of the whole, third reading, then it is being processed for presidential assent. And I think it is the Parliament does not exist in vain. And I have seen people only emphasizing on Article 257.7. When you are interpreting the Constitution, my law lecturer, Professor Mutaha Kangu, taught me that you don't interpret the Constitution in isolation. You don't just interpret the Constitution and say, I will only today interpret Article 257, sub-article 7, and ignore. But you must interpret. When you look at Article 94, you look at Article 259 on construing the Constitution, then Parliament will not exist in vain. And that has been our argument. That is why we need to amend this BBI, because the document, because the committee itself has agreed. You remember yesterday, if you were following, we did question, and majority was present in the House, and I'm happy nowadays he stays up to 6:30 p.m. since he became the whip, is that we were questioning the chair of JLAC as what is it when he says unconstitutional, unreasonable? We will deal it at an appropriate time. Those are the questions that, what happens if the committee of JLAC has finding, and I believe it's a joint report, what happens? And the chairperson of JLAC was telling us somebody can move to court, and I agree with Governor Mutua that we should reduce. And I know there is a matter, and my senior counsel will guide us in the consolidated petition of D versus Atas, where the courts have said, if this matter is the parliament passed, the IBC has been stayed from processing this for referendum even after the president has been suspended. And I think the consolidated petition of David D and others where the courts have given that direction. So maybe two things I can say about this BBI is one, I have a lot, and I hope the Speaker of the Senate will give me around 4 hours, because one, I would need an hour opening remarks, I will need another hour to go to the board, the boarding of my submission, then I will go to conclusion at the 3rd hour, and the 4th hour I'll make the recommendations. Because this is Trevor, this is an important process. This is where I was looking at the answer of 1963. Yeah. I want the posterity when look, they say what Senator Kimani Wamatangi said then, what my brother senior counsel said, and what Gerard Gates, and I need around 4 hours, but I will only point out 2 things only. That one, when Kenyans came to public participation under Article 118, and this matter has been canvassed, there is a Doctors for Life International case versus National Assembly, a South African case, where I said the public participation does not exist as a public relations exercise. When you look at the Robert Kaguru versus Kiambu governor in Finance Bill of 2013, public participation is so critical. So you can't tell Kenyans come public participation for BBI document in parliament. Then you tell them, okay, thank you, you can have chai and mandazi, and that is the end. You can't factor. So I hope as we go into the future, the public participation, even I saw submission by Maendeleo Chap among other political parties. What happens when Maendeleo Chap and other political parties, including Jubilee, including other parties, submitted? The issue of a judicial ombudsman, I'm very gaugy. Because when you give them powers, when you see Article 172 has been amended, including reprimanding and suspending a judge, if I'm the president, hopefully later because I'm still very young, I can just become mischievous and maybe use judiciary ombudsman or judicial service commission and say, can you suspend Judge Kimani Wamatangi so that I can ensure the process. And you know that will be intimidating to judges because we need, when you want to come against judicial officer, we should go through a tribunal so that the stakes are too high, because we know flimsy reasons. By the way, I've seen even clients, when they lose a case, they accuse their lawyer. They say, my lawyer did not allow me to win this case. So I hope we'll look at the judicial ombudsman. Finally, on the issue of Article 97, and I said last week, and I hope Francis Atwal is listening to this, an old trade unionist. When you see the amendment, they have removed a representative of our workers in membership of National Assembly under Article 97. Now we only have special interest group without workers, and yet workers form the basis. When you look under Article 230, Clause 2, they have amended and removed the representative of TSC, Judicial Service Commission, Defense Council. They have now given that power. Now SRC has been made a department where the president will come up, appoint the chairperson and 6 others. Sorry, I almost say Mr. Speaker. So Trevor, what I can say in conclusion is that this is not a popular initiative. You know why? Because state resources was used, the secretariat was funded by states, unlike Punguza Mzigo and Okwash initiative, which my brother started during NASA, this popular initiative is not popular. It is a state-sponsored. It was not done by Kenyans because the state resources were used. Finally, and I want to appeal. I want to, you know, I'm passionate. I said I need 4 hours. That's why finally, Thomas Sankara said something so profound. When he took over, when he changed the name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, means the country of upright men. That real revolution and democracy, if I can paraphrase, belongs to the people who are convinced, not conquered people that have resigned their fate. So I hope the arm twisting of arresting Linturi and intimidating other members of parliament will not rear its ugly. Let us allow all members of parliament to make independent decisions so that we can give Kenyans the best we can.
Dr. Tiende, close this discussion for us.
Let me start by advising Senator Cherargei that when you have so much to say and you need 4 hours to say it, do written submissions.
And then I highlight only.
Submit it to the speaker, then highlight in 10 minutes. You will have done yourself and everyone else a big favor. But secondly, without going into the details, just very briefly again in response to Senator Cherargei, you have mixed the question of powers of the Judicial Service Commission and the creation of the Office of the Judiciary Ombudsman. The question of suspension of judges comes under the Judicial Service Commission. That's not within the question of the Judiciary Ombudsman. So that's a separate matter. Lastly, on popular initiative, let me just let you know, and we'll be speaking to this, that our review across the world of instances, including in Kenya, where you allow initiation of amendments by popular initiative, was always to allow more space in addition to Parliament and the executive, not to the exclusion. That is to say, nothing stops either Parliament itself can do a parliamentary process or a popular initiative. Parliament can choose that we don't want to test this ourselves. Let us test it by gathering signatures, taking it to the county before it comes to us. And so can the executive. In other words, nothing stops the executive from initiating a popular initiative, and nothing stops you and me. It doesn't matter. It does not exclude anyone. But let me speak to
Maybe
this as I close. No, Senator Cherargei.
A quick clarification.
You now need
Can
5
you
hours.
use public hours?
Hold on.
Okay.
Let me speak to this issue in 3 ways, very briefly. One, the question of differences. And this has occupied a lot of space, both within the committee, the allegation, the issue of majority report and minority, and recently there was even a press conference by some of my colleagues. Let me say that that question is overstated. We identified 32 issues that we needed resolved.
Yes.
On 31 issues, we are completely unanimous. On the one issue, and I will revert to it, we are not disagreed. There was one extreme view, and there was another extreme view, and the committee adopted the middle ground in terms of moderation. And let me assure you that if you look at that report, and now it's in the public domain, it is signed by everyone who was able to sign. The so-called minority report, led by Senator Sakaja, is then signed by 7, but all of them had signed the majority report. So in fact, there is no minority report. That is the fact. You cannot sign both majority and minority. Okay?
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, the conclusion, and Senator Wamatangi is right on this. What is important is the conclusion, because you must remember that in Parliament, whether we approve or we do not approve, that document goes to referendum. So what we do in Parliament are basically observations. And the conclusion in which is unanimous is that Parliament, both houses of Parliament, ought to approve that document without amendment. So there's really no difference. Those who then, like my colleagues, had a press conference the other day talking about a lot of things, especially some of them from Luo Nyanza. I think it was unfortunate. It was uninformed, it was premature, and it was unnecessary.
Correct.
Because you are creating a distinction without a difference.
Correct.
We are all agreed that let us approve without amendment. So what is this distinction? And it makes it worse when you then come as MPs from Luo Nyanza.
Yes.
You try to make BBI a Luo affair. BBI is not a Luo affair. Why did the colleagues who signed this report from Senator Wamatangi's side not call a press conference to condemn the chair and the others who signed? It is totally unnecessary. In fact, it brings perceptions of differences which are not real. Let me talk about this. The only issue on which there was some slight difference is the question of the second schedule. That is the one that creates constituencies. And on that, there are 3 things I will not elaborate. There were issues, those who raised issues of fairness. There are those who raised the issues of constitutionality. Okay? And constitutionality can be in 2 ways. It can be about the process. It can be about the content, and I'll elaborate that. Then there are those who raise the question of incompleteness, that even the creation is not completed in the schedule. Okay? So now, there are those members of the committee who therefore wanted us to resolve that we remove that schedule, we sever it. There are those who maintain that there was even nothing at all that was wrong. So we resolved that we will not recommend severance, but we will merely observe. the issues of, you know, constitutionality. So there, an argument is made in the report on why it's unconstitutional. A contrary argument is made in the report on why it's constitutional. Let parliamentarians robustly debate it, but then it still goes to referendum. Secondly now, on the question of errors. Indeed, we are unanimous, and that is always so, that Parliament, under its inherent and stated powers in Article 94, can correct errors of form and typo. Errors of form and typo, not substance. And that we are all agreed on. Okay? But Parliament can choose to do that or not to do that. If it chooses to do that, it must be careful not to make any correction that changes the intention of the promoters. But if it chooses not to do that, then we live with the consequences of not doing that. And the consequences are either two. One is there might be that those typos then negate the intention of the promoters. And if we choose to do that, we must live with that possibility. Or that the typos are such that if you read them, you can see what the promoters intended. And therefore, there's a constitutional interpretation embedded in our constitution, which says you must have a purposive interpretation. So that even if you've left a typo, if where it reads 7, and clearly you intended 9, then the court can interpret that the intention was to read 9. So it can still achieve the same purposes without the correction. Now, that is the decision Parliament will make. Now, there are not many. We identified about 6. But in actual fact, 2 of them we agreed those ones would require an amendment because we can't enter the mind of the promoters what they intended. In the bill that we are looking at, there's really just 1 or 2. And they're not major. They're very minor things. Now, lastly,
very briefly,
is the question of constitutionality. I want to persuade Senator Wamatangi that you can have unconstitutional constitutional amendments, as a matter of fact. And I do not say that lightly. You must remember that this is a committee where there are 18 lawyers. And 8 lawyers in the secretariat, 26 in total. With a cumulative experience, if you add the number of years of experience, 603 years. And which includes all the senior counsel in Parliament. And which also consulted the 2 serious experts who were consulted in the BBI. So any conclusion that you see there is not light. But I will not speak to this document. Let me speak to the theory. The theory is that you can end up with an unconstitutional constitutional amendment, either where in reaching what you have proposed, you have not followed the provision of the current constitution, or it can be substantively unconstitutional. Because in making constitutions, you must also adhere to constitutionalism. If, for example, today, there was a popular initiative saying, we want to exterminate one of the 43 ethnic groups in this country. In theory, it could get 1 million subscribers. In theory, it could pass through 24 counties. But would it be constitutional? Obviously not. Or, if, as has always been said, and without entering this argument, that where your region and Senator Cheregei's region, representing certain ethnicities, came together and decided that for the next 100 years, the presidency will only rotate among those 2 ethnicities. In theory, you can get 1 million vote. You can get 24 counties. Would it be constitutional? Of course not. So you can have unconstitutional constitutional amendments. As to whether this is one, I will not go there. But overall, I think it is a good thing. Okay? I think it is a good thing that Kenyans should discuss these matters robustly, that Parliament should discuss it robustly, and that it must end up at the feet of the Kenyans
Okay.
who will ultimately determine
Yeah.
whether they agree or they do not.
I'm even afraid to ask you guys this question because you people
Can
don't
I
know how
ask
to give
questions?
one-line statements. But
No, you'll
Vice
ask in
Chair-
Parliament.
Yeah, you will take it to Parliament.
but you know,
this
you
one is a bit
Kenyans are
important.
worried.
Okay,
You know, I
issue
wanted
is-
just one
Sheragay,
statement.
Hold on one second.
Yes.
If you can answer this question, it would be great because you're a lawyer as well. If there's a bit of unconstitutionality, like the Jailer Committee
That is-
report says,
yes.
and then the people vote for this document, what does that mean when we pass a document
I will
that
answer
has
you.
unconstitutionality?
I will answer you.
Yes.
The reason we resolved to make observations
Yeah.
and not a determination on it is because ultimately the question of determining constitutionality or not in the scale of things belongs to the judiciary, not to
The High
Parliament,
Court.
ultimately. And therefore, for us, it can be observation.
Yeah.
We can try to avoid it. If we think it was an error of form or typo, then we can deal with it. But if it's a substantive one,
Yeah.
then it lies
So
away.
we are setting this
maybe
up for a
Trevor,
court.
I
maybe
think that
Trevor,
was
just
important.
One line.
Just
You-
one
you're
line.
good at one
Ju-
line
just
statements.
one
Yes.
line. That and that's my view, and
Yeah.
I respect the views that are expressed by my
Yeah.
lawyer and senior counsel.
Yeah.
Two things. The first, I believe
Yeah.
that indeed, if they wanted to comply with their conclusion,
Yeah.
that one, this
Yes.
document is by popular initiative, and two, that it should find its way to the table where the people will have the opportunity to decide on it, as they have said.
Yeah.
Then they would have done two things. One, then, in as much as possible, with all the cumulative experience, and I respect that tremendously,
Yeah.
that they would have said then, let us clear the highway so that this document can find its way to that high table of determination
Yeah.
by the people in the referendum.
Okay.
Now, by having seemed then, one, taken an opinion on all the three issues about constitutionalism, as he
Yeah.
has explained, one, that ups the stakes because they know, as
Yeah.
they sit there as lawyers, that there are matters that are pending in court
Yeah.
that are challenging the same road to that highway. And if the courts determine now that yes, this matter cannot proceed, indeed you will not get to that threshold you are saying
Yeah.
is where the people will exercise
Okay.
the ultimate responsibility as far as that
No,
Article
but
267 is
Trevor, no,
concerned.
just to correct
So-
you. No.
Gentlemen,
So,
you have to
this
take
one
this
must be
to
corrected.
Parliament.
No,
So-
Senator
so-
Matangi.
so
No,
let me
no, no,
finish
let me
let me
inform
finish
you.
let
No.
me
Gentlemen,
finish
I've
that
It
Point of
debate.
contains
information.
both. It contains both.
Point of
It
information.
contains the argument on unconstitutionality,
Yeah.
and it also contains the argument on constitutionality.
Okay.
So it gives you the
Goes to
option
court.
of
Okay.
what.
Yeah,
what-
so
of
it moves
interpretation.
so it
Alright.
moves to
It's
court.
entirely up to you.
Gentlemen,
No,
we
no,
really
no,
have
but
to-
I hope,
yes, we really have to leave it there. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Hold on. One line. Yeah.
Let me just bring it back to the table. I think we're talking about important things, but let me simplify it.
Yeah.
Kakai Kilonzo sang a song that said, "Hii Kenya nchi yangu, hii Kenya mama yangu,
Yeah.
nitaipenda milele."
Milele.
You know, the question is, hii Kenya ambayo anaipenda, je, inatupenda?
Okay.
When I read the American Constitution, I'm just concluding.
I've really run out of time.
No,
Gentlemen.
there's a phrase that is written
That's
there.
the
It says that the
provision to
Declaration
US.
of Independence of the U.S. was, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
Yeah.
That among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay.
So as we discuss the BBI and the life that we're in, is it making us sad? Is it going to give us happiness? Because at the end of the day, all these discussions,
Yeah.
all these commas and everything, it comes down to, is it going to make our lives better as Kenyans? Because at the end of the day, that's all it comes down to.
right.
We can debate until tomorrow.
Yeah.
And my friend here, you talked about 4 hours. Let me give you a quote by Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou said that people will forget what you said.
Yeah.
People will even forget what you did, but people will never forget
How you
make them feel.
All right,
You know
that's where we
quote.
leave
So
it for now.
that's how it
Guys,
is.
thank
I
you
will
so
come
much.
and
Thank you so
post
much.
it.
Let's wrap it up.
It's
Thank you,
about
Bra.
how you
Over
make
to
them
you. Thank
feel.
you so much for
No,
coming
we
this
will
morning.
come.
We'll do this again next Thursday. All right. See you.